Have you ever met someone who has no friends? Not just a small social circle, no friends at all, no one to call, no one to hang out with, no one who checks in on them. Society tells us this means something's wrong with them. They must be weird, antisocial, or difficult. But psychology tells a completely different story. People who have no friends aren't always lonely outcasts. Sometimes they're the most self-aware, emotionally intelligent people you'll ever meet. And understanding why they're alone reveals a lot about authenticity, boundaries, and what real connection actually means. Let's dive into the real psychology behind people who have no friends. 1. They've outgrown everyone around them. This isn't arrogance, it's evolution. Some people grow emotionally, mentally, and spiritually at a faster rate than the people in their environment. They develop new values, new interests, new ways of thinking. And suddenly the friendships that once felt meaningful now feel surface level. Psychologists call this developmental mismatch. They're no longer on the same wavelength as the people they used to know. Conversations feel empty. Hangouts feel forced. So they distance themselves. Not because they think they're better, but because staying connected to people who no longer align with who they are feels exhausting and inauthentic. Research shows that quality connections matter more than quantity, and sometimes having no friends is healthier than keeping fake ones. 2. They have extremely high standards for friendship. People without friends often have a very clear idea of what real friendship should look like. Loyalty, honesty, depth, mutual respect, and they refuse to settle for less. Psychologists link this to secure self-esteem and strong personal boundaries. They'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who drain them, use them, or don't value them. They've been burned before by friendships that were one-sided, toxic, or conditional. So now they protect their energy carefully. They don't hand out their time and trust to just anyone. And in a world where most people collect surface-level connections, their standards feel impossibly high. But to them, it's not about quantity. It's about finding people who are actually worth keeping. 3. They're introverted and socially exhausted. Not everyone who has no friends is lonely. Some people genuinely prefer solitude. Psychologists say introverts recharge alone, and for some, socializing feels like work, not pleasure. They don't hate people. They just don't have the energy for constant interaction. Small talk drains them. Group hangouts overwhelm them. Maintaining friendships requires effort they'd rather invest elsewhere. Research from personality psychology shows that introverts can be perfectly happy without a large social circle. They find fulfillment in hobbies, creative pursuits, and deep thinking. They don't need friends to validate their existence. And society's obsession with being social makes them feel like something's wrong with them when really, they're just wired differently. 4. They've been deeply hurt and don't trust easily. Many people who have no friends carry invisible wounds from past betrayals. Maybe a close friend abandoned them. Maybe they were bullied, excluded, or backstabbed. Maybe they opened up to someone who used their vulnerability against them. Psychologists call this relational trauma, and it creates a protective wall that's hard to break through. They want connection, but fear keeps them isolated. They'd rather be alone than risk being hurt again. Studies show that people with trust issues often push others away before they get too close. It's a defense mechanism. They convince themselves they're better off alone because admitting they want friends means admitting they're still vulnerable, and that terrifies them. 5. They don't know how to make friends as adults. Making friends as a kid was easy. You sat next to someone in class, shared your snacks, and suddenly you were best friends. But as adults, it's complicated. You can't just walk up to someone and ask them to be your friend. Psychologists say adult friendships require intentionality, vulnerability, and repeated interaction. And for people who struggle with social skills or social anxiety, this feels impossible. They don't know where to meet people. They don't know how to start conversations. They don't know how to move from acquaintance to actual friend. So they stay isolated, not because they don't want connection, but because they genuinely don't know how to build it. And the longer they go without friends, the harder it becomes to break the cycle. 6. They've chosen their peace over people-pleasing. Some people have no friends because they stop pretending to be someone they're not. They used to bend over backwards to keep people around. They said yes when they wanted to say no. They hid their opinions to avoid conflict. They performed a version of themselves that was acceptable to others. But eventually, they got tired. Psychologists call this authentic living versus conditional acceptance. They realized that keeping friends by sacrificing their true self wasn't worth it, so they stopped people-pleasing. And when they did, the friendships fell apart, because those connections were never based on who they really were. Now they're alone, but they're free. And for them, that freedom is worth more than fake companionship. 7. They're dealing with mental health struggles no one sees. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, these conditions make socializing feel like climbing a mountain. People who have no friends are often fighting battles others don't understand. They cancel plans because they're too overwhelmed. They isolate because they don't want to burden anyone. They push people away because they feel like they're too broken to be around. Psychologists say mental health issues create a vicious cycle. The more isolated you become, the worse your mental health gets. But the worse your mental health gets, the harder it is to reach out. Research shows that loneliness and depression feed into each other. And for people stuck in this loop, having no friends isn't a choice. It's a symptom of a struggle they're barely surviving. 8. They prioritize deep connection over shallow socializing. Here's the truth. Some people would rather have 0 friends than a bunch of acquaintances who don't really know them. Psychologists say people who value depth over breadth in relationships often end up alone because deep connections are rare. They're not interested in hanging out just to hang out. They don't want to talk about the weather or gossip about celebrities. They crave meaningful conversations, vulnerability, real understanding. And most people aren't capable of or interested in that level of intimacy. So they wait, alone, hoping to find even one person who gets them. Research shows that people who prioritize quality connections report higher life satisfaction than those with large, shallow social networks. So yes, they have no friends, but they're not settling for less than what they deserve. So next time you meet someone who has no friends, don't pity them or assume something's wrong with them. They might be healing from trauma. They might be protecting their peace. They might be waiting for real connection instead of settling for fake ones. Or they might just be perfectly content in their own company. And honestly, in a world obsessed with being seen and validated by others, choosing yourself over shallow friendships is one of the bravest things you can do. If you want to understand the psychology behind what people hide, subscribe now. Because on this channel, we don't judge. We decode, we understand, and we validate the experiences others ignore.